Kind of around the school, we have all of the community members in their houses. Maybe some of them like to garden or have different hobbies. We have a tennis court that maybe isn't used too much. It looks a little run down and ragged. We have some cars speeding through town, speeding through constantly. Kids aren't really out and about because there's not a lot to do maybe, or the speeding cars might hit them and we don't want a tragedy. Over here we have the fire department, which keeps the town safe and protected. We notice that we have this path that kind of goes through the woods, but it has this big sign that says, "Take path at your own risk." We have to kind of wonder, is this an okay path to go down? We have some hills and mountains and trails up in the hills, and when we go out there, we find that there's ATVs running rampant across the hills through these trails, and maybe they're not always wearing their helmets. In town, we have a one-stop shop. This is a pretty small community. So this is our convenience store, our grocery store, anything that we need is at this stop. But it might not have everything that we need in our community. As we get over to the other side of town, we have Bad News Path. And that becomes a place that we all know exists, and we all know it's bad news. So no one besides those bad news folks take that path. We have a creek that runs through town, and unfortunately we have a big community dump that's not really official. Maybe there's some no dumping signs, but we're not sure if that sign actually encourages more dumping. We don't have a bridge connecting our community building to the rest of our community. We noticed that our community building maybe has some graffiti or tagging on it and hasn't been used maybe as much as it could. And we also have a nice big riding arena for maybe some horseback riding, but there's a bunch of rocks and weeds are starting to pop up and grow.
Is this wild?
Is this wild? Wow. This community, this is what our community looks like now. So there's some good things about it. There's a school, there's some things, areas to play, but there's some things that maybe we could address as we get into our projects. Our next scene, questions to be asked and potential methods to gather data. So we have our scene, and we're going to go through and start asking questions. Who in the community has skills to share? So we've noticed that maybe some of the community members garden or have different hobbies. What can they share with us? What activities are happening out here? We notice that when we go out there, there's maybe some ATVs or motorcycles going around, but what for sure is happening out there and who's using it? We have this take path at own risk. What are the risks? Why do we have a big sign up that is pretty negative towards this path? The one-stop shop, what's available? What is in this shop? And so maybe we could do an inventory and figure out what's available here. What are the transportation options? You know, it's a small community, but we have a lot of kids. Can the kids get around well? Do we need to figure out some transportation things? Are these used? You know, a tennis court that maybe was a little run down. Is it even being used? Is it something that we could use? Can the school be used for more? The school kind of acts as our center. Can it be more than just a school? Do the right people know about this bad news path? Everybody kind of knows about it in the community, but do the right people who can really make a difference and change what happens out there, do they know about it? Why are we dumping? What's encouraging this dumping, or how is that happening? Is the creek polluted? It's right next to the creek. We don't see any fish in our creek. How do people get over here? How do we utilize these places that maybe aren't as accessible? And then when we get on this side, what are the opportunities? We have this great building or this resource. What are some of the opportunities that we can use? And then how can we utilize this riding arena? So we start to look at our community as it is, and we start to ask, why is it like this, and how could it be better? What are some things that we notice that could be changed? Actions taken. So as your YA4-H team, you go out and you identify some of these things, and you're going to put these into action. So we look at the school, and maybe we know we have some people who garden. Maybe we want to start a school garden. Maybe they can share their knowledge with the school. We get people to slow down because there's children at play. Maybe we put some signs up or get the police to come out and help enforce that slow down. We create access to the other side, build a bridge to get across. We organize classes, maybe. We clean up the community building, organize some classes. We get the riding arena cleaned up, cut down those weeds so we can get our horse in there, maybe pick up some rocks so we don't get our horse hurt. We do a community cleanup, get the dump out of there. We don't need that. And then we spread the word about Bad News Path. You know, once people start knowing about it, maybe they start going out there, more and more people are out there. It's not a secret place to be. So we spread the word and we shut down Bad News Path. We get over here, we take an inventory of one-stop shop, and we encourage healthy choices. Maybe we find that produce isn't even an option here, so we encourage the store owners to help bring in some produce. We do a trail cleanup. Maybe we find out on this trail it's overgrown and it's just not easy to get through, so we go through and do a trail cleanup. We find some resources, so our youth talk to our community members and our adults, and they're saying, sure, we can help. A lot of the things that we do is we have to ask, and we have to go out there and find out what's available. When we get up here, we find out that, yeah, there are ATVs out here. That is something that people like to do. So we create ATV-specific trails, and we also have hiking trails. And we really promote and enforce helmet use. And then we create more walking and biking paths so that kids can get around and utilize these things. Maybe they can get over to the community building to take a class, or they can get to the school garden easily, or down to the shop to buy an apple to eat. So these are our actions taken. And as we look to the future, we have our community after the actions are taken. So looking down the road, we have our houses, and maybe we expanded some gardening options because community members shared with each other. We established a garden club at the school. We have tennis Thursdays where the community gets together and plays tennis. We have biking trails for mountain biking. We have hiking trails for hiking. We have ATV trails where everybody's wearing their helmet. We have Monday, Wednesday hiking clubs that go out. The fire department starts offering courses like maybe some first aid, and they offer some bike and ATV safety. We develop some bike paths so people can get around. Maybe we establish a Thursday farmers market because we find out, you know what, there's not a lot of healthy produce options, but if our community starts growing produce, we need a market for them to be able to sell it. Our one-stop shop starts carrying some more local produce. We get our bridge in, our classes, we've got cooking and yoga and Zumba and ATV safety at our community building. We have Saturday riding lessons for people who want to learn how to ride horses or show. Our little dump maybe becomes a community park, and Bad News Trail becomes Good News Trail. So our YA4-H team can really make a difference. And while not all of this is going to happen all at once, little step by step, we can really change a community.
So in the world that I lived in, which is planning things like this and planning programs. One of the things we do is we say, how will the world be different because of the work we do? So Barb, Danny, and Lynette, and me, when we're thinking about programs that we're designing, we have to say, what is the problem we're trying to address, and how is the world going to be different because of the work we do? Because if we're not going to make a difference, then why are we going to start? Now, there's a lot of reasons to have a lot of fun, right? I mean, I wouldn't mind coming hanging out with you for the weekend, but that probably doesn't accomplish much in terms of the things that we're asked to do. When we think about how your YA4-H programs might have impact, and when we talk about impact, that's that last frame, the difference that it's going to make. It's important to dream big. And the thing that you don't want to do is say, oh, really? Who could ever build a bridge? Or, you know, come on. You know, the Bad News Trail has always been there. No one's ever going to be able to fix that Bad News Trail. Who would ever want to hike? Why should I bother? And you can see how it would be easy to think that the problems seem too big or too hard or too comprehensive to change a whole community like that. But if you can't dream it, it will never happen. And so what we're going to ask you to do now is for your county teams to prepare 4 storyboards for us. And we want you to do that first one, to draw a picture as your community as it is. So this includes the things that are both, you know, really good about your community, things that maybe you notice but you don't think much about, and then, you know, maybe some problems particularly related to health that you might know are going on. So we all live in communities, who was it that said, oh, I think it was Karen, who said, you know, I'm pretty sure we have drugs going on in Bend. It just isn't really obvious, but I'm pretty sure it's there. So Bend looks pretty idyllic, but even in Bend, there's some problems that are going on. Then the second thing I want you to do is draw the second frame, which has to do with what are some questions you can ask about the potential things that you're identifying. What do you need to know? Who might you ask? What evidence might you gather? I mean, sometimes it can be as simple as going out and doing a video of it or taking a picture of it. You take a picture of something happening on the Bad News path, and then you've got evidence that we've got a problem, and that's very powerful evidence. In other cases, it might be that you want to, you know, interview people, or you might want to ask an expert. So Danny's Creek here, that her question is this polluted? Well, that might be where you call OSU Extension and say, is there someone who could come out and look at the creek and tell us what's going on, give us an idea of the health of this creek? So that's a way you could gather information about the health of something else. We have experts we can talk to or involved. So think through some of those questions. And then the third one, think through some of the actions, both small and big. So you can do some very, very small things that make a difference. And then some things may take a while to get going, such as getting community classes going, or getting the fire department to teach. They were teaching Zumba, they were teaching ATV safety or something like that. So that might be a little bit bigger project. But what are some of the immediate small-term things you can do, as well as the bigger projects you might undertake? And then the last frame, if you go through all this effort, how will your community look different? And that's where the dreaming part comes in. So when we talked about story time, and then Rachel helped us think about a story as a film or a movie going on in your head, and we talked about the different frames along the way. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to create 4 of these frames. And then that will get you engaged in talking about your community together. And community can be used very broadly. It could mean your county. There may be, in the case of Malheur County, there may be 2 different communities within the county that are very, very different from each other. So they may have different needs. A community in the bigger cities might be a neighborhood. You know, so it doesn't necessarily mean your whole town, but you can define community in whatever way that seems to work best for what you're talking about. Does that sound good? So we have on your tables 5 sheets of paper. If you'll make sure that there's one sheet underneath what you're drawing on all the time, so if it bleeds